All right, so this is how we're going to make our little wire people for our next project that's inspired by Nick Cave. So you want to take everything from that bag, you want to take your plaster, and you actually, before you do anything else, you want to cut it up into like different sizes. So we have some strips that are like long and thin, and then short and wider, and then some rectangles of different sizes. Just make a little pile of various shapes. And make sure you have a cup of warm water with kind of a wide opening, and your printout of your person as a reference, masking tape, and some scissors. Now I think I gave you everything except for the cup holder and the scissors. So make sure you go get those, cut up your plaster, and make sure you do that before you actually start working. And once you have your plaster cut, you're going to take it and push it off to the side so it's not in your work area. And you'll see why that's important later. But to make your wire person, what you're going to do is take the longer piece. Some of you have two pieces, some of you just have one long one. Unravel it and then fold it in half. So you have one long piece that's folded in half. And you're going to line it up on your paper. You're going to twist about where the head is, like that. And then you'll keep twisting to kind of build a little bit of a torso. Now there's more than one way to make a wire person. This is just a way I think that's easy. So if you have another way you want to try, totally go for it. There's certainly more than one way to do it. The biggest thing about this method is that it's nice to have one continuous piece of wire that tends to be a lot stronger than cutting up a piece of wire and using it multiple ways. And also, you want to have loops for the feet. So you can see right down here, I twisted the torso, pulled down a wire for the leg, and when I got to the foot, I pulled it up to make a little loop. So it looks kind of like this. And I'm going to take that and twist it, and now bring this piece of wire back up around the leg. Now that I have this one foot done, I'm going to keep rebending it so I fix what I lost. I want to keep this wire as straight as possible. If I have any areas that jut out, it can make it hard to balance later. So now I have what I can use for an arm. I'm going to bring it over here, and then same thing, I want to bring this down, loop it as for a hand, and then twist it back together. And having little loops for the head, feet, and hands can be helpful, but they're mostly helpful for the feet, because that's going to be the way that your little person stands, and they do have to stand for this project. So now I have a foot and I have a hand, and they line up decently to my little person, my little reference. I'm just going to do the other side, same thing. Pull down for a leg, loop for a foot, and then twist it. And this one I'm going to actually stand up to make sure that I have enough for it to bend and stand. I don't need huge loops for the feet, but I do need something down there to actually keep this guy up. So now you can see there's 2 loops for the feet. And now I just finish off this leg. And one little limb left. So I'm going to bend this guy down. Also ends on a loop, and now I just twist it off. So I have a little wire person that I can build from. Now what I want to do is take my masking tape and start filling him out a little bit. I can't put plaster directly on the wire because it'll just slip off. So if I cover him with masking tape, and not in any particular order, then I can add my plaster to this surface. Now, the only thing I will say is that the more you can cross your materials, the stronger they are. So see how this was crossed? Same with your plaster when you start looking at that. The more times you can cross the material, the stronger the bond is going to be. And you just want to cover as much of the wire as you can. This does not have to be super neat, but you do want to make sure you do is compress the tape. See how it's all puffy? I want to squeeze it down and compress it. because it's going to be the support for my plaster when I add that layer. Okay, so now you have a little stick figure, and it's really not likely to stand right now because it's too wobbly. Sometimes on a flat surface you can get lucky, but you do want to make sure that even at this point that your feet are flat. If you have any kind of balls of tape down here, make sure you cut those off or unravel and redo them because you need to have flat feet for the next part. And what you'll do next is you'll take your water, you'll take your plaster. Now you've noticed this is very dusty, so make sure you have your newspaper down. Don't work under a fan because that'll just kind of exasperate everything. And you're gonna fill out this person. Now the part that's gonna be seen will be the head and the neck and maybe the legs. Some of you might not see any of the face, some of you might not see anything, but most likely the feet and the legs will be visible. And the feet are also important because they have to support the actual position of the figure. They have to stand. So once you have the plaster, you also be able to change these guys. So if you want your arms down, that's fine. If you want your arms out, commit to that now. But however you put them now will be how they stay once the plaster's on them. So when you dip your plaster in your warm water, you want to kind of squeeze out excess water and then just go ahead and wrap it around your person. Again, the more times your plaster can cross itself, the stronger it is. And you'll see when you take your fingers and smooth over it after you put it down, you can kind of smooth away all those little holes, and that also makes it stronger. Now you do want to be careful that your space where you work, you're not pulling water over the dry plaster. Once this plaster gets wet and it dries, it's no longer good. And you're going to use this for a couple projects. So you don't want to use all this plaster, or get all this plaster wet and then come back to finish this piece, and then you can't do it because all your plaster is no longer usable. So keep your plaster away from where your hands are or where your water's dripping. And you can, I'm going to maybe leave the face visible, so I'm going to flesh out the head on this one a little bit. And that just means like kind of balling up the plaster and smoothing it over. I'm going to do this early because if I make this weight at the end, my balance might be off if I make my feet first. Since I know I'm going to make this a little voluminous, I'm going to push in here with my fingers to get a little indent for some eyes. But these are details you don't really need to follow if you don't need a face visible. I'm going to push it up for a nose. You can kind of see this plaster is kind of fun to play around with. So just experiment with it, push it around, see what you can do. And then go ahead and firm up and build up the rest of your layers. Now, I would suggest saving the feet for last, which is kind of what I've done here. If you want to have anything that you need to add for volume, like say your design requires kind of shoulders to hold something up, make sure you add that here. You can take your plaster and you can kind of bundle it up, smush it around, and add any volume to the anatomy that you're missing. That's kind of just dependent on your individual designs and what you think you might need. So add little shoulders here. Okay, so for the feet, I want to make sure that he can stand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap some plaster just around the feet, pulling it up towards the ankle to kind of hold it in place. Now it's not going to be enough to just have a foot. You're going to have to make sure you add an actual heel to your foot. And the way you want to do that is take one of your smaller pieces of plaster and kind of ball it up and press it down there to fill out that volume. And as I'm forming this with my finger, I'm also going to be putting it down on a dry surface and pressing it flat. If I don't press it flat against an actual flat surface, it's not going to be enough for me to just press it flat with my finger. That'll never get it actually flat. So I'm going to, and see that can actually stand a little bit already. So I'm going to add the other foot. And then you want to press down. I'm trying to avoid the big wet spot right there because it's a little messy. This one's standing kind of okay. And then still though, see how I don't really have, this one has more of a heel. This one needs a little more of a heel. Just gonna take some plaster, just ball it up here. It's almost like you want to give it a nice, thick, rounded 90-degree angle. And that really will make a difference. And then it's a matter of holding it in place, pushing the foot against the ground, and try and seeing where you can find that pose, where it can stand. It might have to be pushing and arranging the limbs in different ways. If you feel like you find an area that's low on volume that might help your balance, go ahead and fill that out. You can add more weight and more volume to any areas. That's essentially how you're going to make your person. You do want to let them dry standing up, and then anything that's super rough and ragged, like say you don't love like the feet are going to be visible most likely for all of our sculptures. So if there's anything that's really rough about them, you can always go back later with some scissors or sandpaper and clean them up. But you do want to let it dry standing. If you let it dry like this, it's going to dry in a way that's not going to be bendable, and then it might not stand. So make sure you have a flat surface, make sure it's clean and not wet, and then press it down so that it does stand, and then let it dry like that. The pose you end up with might also impact your fashion elements, but there's a lot you can do with different poses. And sometimes it could be even fun to actually bend them or twist them in a unique way, like they're actually in motion, so don't be afraid to do that either. That could be really fun. Like if you want to have arms up to the side, if you want to have the head tilted all the way back or bent over, that could be a fun balance challenge, but also could look really interesting at the end. But that's it. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I'm really excited to see how different all of these look.